got a couple of minutes before my next delivery, so this is the perfect time to explain to you exactly what the hell you're watching. My name is SodaBurger, and I work for the Perfect Opinion Delivery Service, which works for you. And now over the next about 150 years, me and my coworkers are going to be talking to you about basically everything that you love. We're going to give you reviews of movies, music, current events, random thoughts, video games, everything that's on your mind is going to be on the tip of our tongues. On top of that, we're going to show you a little bit of the galaxy. You're going to ride along with us while we make our deliveries and witness the insanity that comes along with being an intergalactic package slanger. And I'll tell you exactly why I need to keep this little ball of trouble out of the wrong hands and hopefully keep myself alive in the process. But we're not going to worry about that right now. Right now, we're going to talk about the prized possession in my vast movie collection. It's 3 movies that a lot of people haven't seen, and it is the original versions of the 1977 trilogy Star Wars. Now, for these special DVDs, the actual title is Harmy's Despecialized Edition. You can't even buy these. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I had to do to get these, but I will say there's an alien out there somewhere with a devilish grin on his face right now. I really don't want to get into it, but I'll tell you my reaction to the alien's request. I was like, who the hell are you, Louis C.K.? Star Wars. Go ahead. Hey, watch the shoes! Okay, moving on. As you can tell by all this, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. Shit, I ain't gonna deny it. Nerd and proud. What? Now, I'll tell you exactly how nerdy I am. These are custom-made covers with artwork by a really cool artist. You can check out his other retro-style movie posters on Instagram or some shit. I don't know. You'll be able to find it. But anyway, his name is Ollie Moss. It's good stuff. Really interesting work. On the back sides, I got some other custom stuff. There's a guy who did a retro cover for Return of the Jedi. He's done retro covers for all of them, but I specifically like this one. His name is Old Red Jalopy. I know, how cool is that, right? And there's one for Empire Strikes Back. It kind of reminds me of like a 90s comic book cover. The guy that did it, his name is Tyler Stout. And for the back of my Star Wars, I forget who this artist is. Maybe one of you could do the homework and tell me exactly where this came from. Go ahead and leave that down in the comments, and I'll make sure the company sends you a prize pack. How you like that? So let's get into exactly why these movies are so important and why they mean so much to me and tons of other people who are having such a hard time getting their hands on. As I'm sure pretty much everybody knows, in 1977, George Lucas came out with the most influential and profitable movie ever made. It changed the way movies were made, and it changed the way movies were marketed and promoted. It's just an all-around game changer that raised the bar in so many different categories. And he followed that movie with 2 of the most amazing sequels that just kept raising the bar. It became a part of pop culture. It became a part of history. About 20, 30 years later, he decided that he'd most likely be making prequels to the first 3 movies that he made back in 1977. And he wanted to whet people's appetite a little bit by refreshing their memory about the movies from 1977. So what he did was he went back into his original movies and added some additional special effects, tweaked a little bit here and there, and it turned out that a lot of the stuff that he did was pretty cool. But there was a lot that wasn't cool, and it pissed a lot of people off. It didn't really piss me off because I kind of look at it a different way, but I'll admit it was a little bit disappointing. Disappointing one, that he would change the actual narrative of his classic story. And on top of that, I think he was getting his feet wet with some new technology that wasn't quite ready yet. And good God, did it show up on the screen. Boy, woo, that was bad. That Jabba the Hutt scene, we'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, I wanted to address a lot of the hate that's gone towards George Lucas. There's a lot of people that say he ruined their childhood by fucking with a good thing. And basically, he went from being one of the most beloved directors and story creators of all time to one of the most hated people of all time, which to me is a little harsh because first and foremost, he's an artist. He's an artist and he's a storyteller. And come on, man, artists are weird. You know, we do weird shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's sometimes what makes the art so amazing. But, you know, sometimes there are missteps. You know, most of the time art is not perfect. A lot of the times art finds perfection in its imperfection because it shows its humanity, and in that humanity creates a deep emotional connection because the person viewing that art can relate. So in my opinion, it's very harsh to put all the hate on George Lucas. The man inspired me and millions billions of other people to think creatively, think outside the box, push the limits, and he changed the way movies were made. The entirety of filmmaking, not once, but twice within 40 years. It's amazing. And basically everything that we see today is directly related to his contribution to filmmaking. So, big up George Lucas. You the man. I know shit doesn't always go the way that we want it to go. You my dog for life, man. Having said that, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what I believe he fucked up royally. One of my favorite things about Star Wars is the sounds. There's something so visceral that moved me so much when I first saw Star Wars, because it seemed like every other sci-fi movie in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of pew, 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 and the sound design for Star Wars just blew them all out of the water. It sucked us in and immersed us in a world. After watching Star Wars, all other sci-fi seemed generic. This was an original, fresh take that just felt real. And one of the changes, one of my biggest disagreements of the changes that were made in the special edition were sounds and music that was taken out or changed. And one example is spoiler alert. Just a heads up, this little talk is full of spoilers, but I'll try to give you a heads up. One of the missteps in the special edition is when Luke Skywalker is getting his ass kicked by sand people, and they're about to take him back to their hut and do despicable things to him, I could only imagine. Here comes a shadowy figure over the hill to the rescue. And what he does is he makes this weird otherworldly sound. It sounds like an elephant and a walrus and a porpoise. You're like, what the hell is it? Anyway, he uses that to scare away the sand people so he can go check on Luke and make sure that he's all right. Now, George Lucas, in his specialized editions, he changed that amazing sound twice. He just couldn't get something that he likes, but the original sound is one of the first things that sucked me into the movie as a kid. You're like, what kind of place is this? And what was this movie maker smoking when he was making it? One of the most controversial and hated changes in the special editions is, of course, the Han Solo scene in the cantina. In the original film, Han Solo gets in a little disagreement with somebody that he owes money to, and instead of going through a whole rigmarole of talking about it, he just fucking blasts him. He just fucking shoots him like a gangster, because basically that's his character. That's who he is. He really doesn't give a shit. This is another one that George Lucas went to town on and changed like 2 or 3 times. Sometimes Greedo would shoot first, sometimes Han would shoot first. Sometimes they'd shoot together. Sometimes Han Solo would do the Cabbage Patch. One of George Lucas's reasons for making this change was that he thought it made the character of Han Solo too cold-hearted, and he felt it was out of place for what he calls a kids movie. I guess George Lucas forgot in the first 45 minutes of the film, 2 people get burnt alive, and he shows us their charred corpses that are still smoking. Somebody gets their arm chopped off. Even though he made the change to the Han Solo cantina scene, somebody else gets shot. Yeah, plop your toddler down in front of that. Good thinking, George. But that brings up another issue about the classification of a children's story. One of the most famous children's stories is Little Red Riding Hood. Now, in this children's story, an old lady gets eaten by a wolf. But don't worry about her. She'll be all right. For most of the story, she's still alive, but she's just chilling in the wolf's stomach. You know what I'm saying? She's just chilling, posted up. So shit goes sideways for the wolf, and a lumberjack catches up with him and takes a fucking axe, chops the wolf open. Out slides Granny, covered in stomach acid and intestines. And she's just like, OMG, thank you. It's so humid in there. And that's one of America's most beloved children's stories. You know, so I mean, the argument that he was trying to clean up a children's story is really out the window. It makes me actually think of a quote by Steven Spielberg when he was talking about his classic Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In that, spoiler alert, the main character is somewhat possessed psychically by aliens. And it causes him basically to lose his shit, like one does when an alien is fucking with your brain. But the dude happens to be a family man, and it basically tears apart the family. His wife is freaking out, his kids don't know what the hell is going on, and by the end of it, he basically leaves his family to try to get some answers to what's going on with him. Steven Spielberg said that if he had a chance to do it over again, he would not have made that character leave his family. These decisions by George Lucas and by Steven Spielberg come from a place of when they were making the movies, they didn't have children. Afterwards, their thinking was somewhat different because they have raised children, which is completely understandable. But at the same time, I think as artists, we we owe it to ourselves to be truthful to ourselves at the time and also truthful to the reality of life. That seems like a pretty realistic approach, that an alien would possess a dude's brain enough where it would be the most important thing even over his family. You know, in a lot of situations, daddies leave, you know, it's one of those things. And the character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he seemed like a good dude who really did love his family, but he was fucked up. So it seems like a realistic approach to this story. And it's definitely a realistic approach to who Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were as filmmakers at the time they were making the movie. So in my opinion, you really just got to stay true to yourself. And to cite one other movie, not to get too long-winded about it, another children's movie is Zootopia. And Zootopia is a beautiful example of a children's movie that does not talk down to children. I mean, look, kids they're little people. They do deserve to be protected from the harsher elements of life, but you can teach them lessons about the harsher lessons of life in a way that won't traumatize them. And Zootopia is a perfect example of that. Zootopia is talking about racism, bigotry, class discrimination, political corruption. I mean, that's some deep shit for a kids movie. They present it to the audience in the cute little disguise of a bunny costume, but they're still talking about it and presenting it honestly. And I was amazed by it. So it's a perfect example of something that would be considered a children's film that still respects the human experience without sugarcoating it and at the same time presenting it intelligently. Okay, moving on. So another change that was just basically disgusting was the insertion of Jabba the Hutt into Star Wars A New Hope, the first movie. It's a scene that just completely takes all the mystery and badassery out of the character of Jabba the Hutt. Originally, Jabba the Hutt didn't make it into the Star Wars movies until the last movie of the series, Return of the Jedi, and it is amazing. He's one of the greatest non-human fictional characters in a movie, especially for that time. He's just the most amazing character. His design, his voice. So there was a scene that was cut out of Star Wars A New Hope because the technology just wasn't there. And also, it was a scene that really wasn't needed. And when inserted into the first movie, it ruined the pacing and the tone of the movie. But George Lucas decided to put it back in there. And even though it was the current special effects at the time, I don't know who the hell he got to create a CG version of Jabba the Hutt, but whoever it was, oh man, did they screw the pooch. It was horrible. It was horrible. I mean, at that time, there was video games doing better CGI than the Jabba the Hutt that they put in there. I used to work with this dude that was in the military, this old dude, and he had all these hilarious sayings like, "Boy, you look like a pile of whale turds at the bottom of the ocean." And Jabba the Hutt in this scene does look like a pile of whale turds at the bottom of the ocean. He was never the most handsome creature to begin with, but the computer artist did him no justice at all. And on top of that, it changed the whole character of Jabba the Hutt. Jabba's a badass gangster, and in that inserted piece of film, Han Solo was talking all kinds of shit, pointing at him like, you know, this is how it's gonna be, this is what's up. He steps on Jabba's tail, and Jabba doesn't even do nothing. It completely ruins the character of Jabba the Hutt, and it really takes you out of the movie, as in the pacing of it and just the entire narrative. So, I'm gonna skip to one other point of the trilogy. This is a big spoiler. At the end of the second film, The Empire Strikes Back, there's a confrontation between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. Alright, so it's a very dire situation. Luke Skywalker is hanging off of an antenna with his hand chopped off, and Darth Vader is telling him that he, the most evil person in the galaxy, is his daddy. So you can imagine how distraught Luke is in this situation. Even though he's going through so much physical pain and inner turmoil, instead of giving up and giving in to the darkness that may be in his heart and the darkness of the situation, he decides, rather than taking the hand of the most evil man in the galaxy, who happens to be his father, he'll plummet maybe to his death. So he just lets go and falls in one of the most amazing displays of courage or moral fortitude. He's fallen through the air, and in the original version, he just fell silently like a man. You know, that's how a man falls to his death. You don't scream. But in George Lucas's special edition, he made a change, and he decided to have Luke Skywalker scream like a little girl as he falls falls. It changes the entire scene, the character of Luke Skywalker, and possibly the entire trilogy, because the scream that he put in there almost made it seem like, you know, Luke Skywalker was just like, whoop, whoop, whoops, you know, and slipped, and he's ah! And so he's falling, ah! And it just takes you out of the whole coolness of the moment. And he did other changes in the movie where he changed dialogue or he changed people's voices that was completely unnecessary. Even if it had been gnawing at him for, 20 or 30 years, at some point it would seem like it would kind of grow on you because it takes away from the overall aesthetic and emotional involvement of the film. And another scene, basically the final showdown scene between Luke Skywalker, the Emperor, and Darth Vader. Spoiler alert. The Emperor is shooting friggin' lightning bolts out of his fingertips, zapping Luke Skywalker, basically trying to cook him like a chicken. I mean, smoke's coming off him, she's screaming. And in this moment, Darth Vader finds his lost humanity. And in the original films, you've seen all this play out on somebody whose face you can't even see, but you can feel everything going on underneath the mask. It's an amazing piece of filmmaking that they were able to achieve such an emotional moment in somebody without even being able to see his face or his eyes or anything. It was just focusing on the mask and his helmet. It was amazing. But George Lucas decided that he wanted to tell you exactly how to feel in the moment, and so he added dialogue to Darth Vader to the scene. So Darth Vader, he's kind of looking around, and they added, "No, no, no!" And he jumps in, grabs the Emperor, and tosses him like a frisbee. That, for me, took a scene that had so much with doing so little, and it cheapened it, and it really dumbed down the moment. His changes turned out to suck. But to end on a good note about some of the changes that George Lucas made, the restoration of the film was amazing. It looks beautiful. Some of the special effects in small doses, it really added to the moment, to the world building. It was pretty cool. But I think the consensus is that it probably would have been better just left alone. That's why I'm really grateful for what this guy Harmy did. What he did was he took from a lot of different sources. Laserdisc, I believe he took from some of the special editions, just some of the restored parts. He kind of Frankensteined the hell out of whatever he could get his hands on that was the best quality of the original version of the movie. It's a piece of my childhood. It's a piece of my adulthood. These movies mean so much to me and to millions, maybe billions of people around the world. I think the original trilogy represents what can be achieved by a simple story. So 1,000 thank yous to Harmy for going through all the trouble to piece these together. Big up. And the last thing I'll talk about is I've heard that a lot of younger people, having grown up in what George Lucas created, basically, in the computer-generated image revolution, that it's kind of hard for them to appreciate anything that isn't crystal clear, unquestionably realistic. I always give the analogy that, personally, I'd really rather watch an amazing movie, a great story, just creative ambitiousness on the oldest, most beat up VHS recording rather than watch a crystal clear 4K pile of dog shit, which is a lot of the times what we are being presented nowadays, because it seems like without the passion, the creativity, and the innovation that it took to create these images, it seems like it's used very nonchalant and lazily. And it's a shame seeing that absolutely anything is possible now, but people are still screwing it up mainly because they take it for granted. So I have nothing but the deepest respect and admiration of the people who actually use their creativity to tell otherworldly, fantastic stories. I think the thing that makes people the most frustrated and the most mad at George Lucas is not so much the fact that he made changes to these movies, but he made it so you couldn't get the original versions anymore, the ones that we originally fell in love with. So basically George Lucas said, I'm doing it the way I want to do it, and fuck your feelings. So I think that's where a lot of the hate comes from. But I think a lot of people are really busy hating and they forget about the beauty in what originally was. And I think that's a shame. So since Harmy's Despecialized edition is such an amazing achievement for basically just its existence because of the rarity of it, it's getting the highest rating. So Harmy's Despecialized edition of the 1977 Star Wars trilogy gets a SodaBurger fries, and pie. Oh, that sounds delicious. But it looks like I have reached my destination and I have to get back to work. So thank you so much for joining me. Remember to comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would like to see reviewed. Remember to subscribe so you can stay tuned for future episodes. Go ahead and go to our parent company's website, cursewordcircus.com. cursewordcircus.com. If you want to check out some pretty cool stuff, play some trivia, maybe send us a message. And something else that's very important is I want to be doing this for a long time, and I want to show you what's really going on in this galaxy. I'm sure you can imagine that it takes quite a bit of work and quite a bit of time. So I would be eternally grateful if you would head on over and check out our Patreon page, because you can be a lot more than just a patron. You can be a producer on this show. So go ahead, go over to our Patreon page, which is listed somewhere around this piece. I hope to see you back next episode. I appreciate all the love and support that I'm getting on this project, and I'm just going to keep giving it to you. So see you back next time with more shenanigans and insight into what makes us happy. Thanks for watching. See you in a minute.